Have you ever seen revenge without a single scream? Just one office printer, quietly exposing every lie. She walked out smiling, and no one knew her silence would be the end of them. My name is Kara. I'm 33 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. It was just after 8 a.m., that hollow in-between hour when the building still feels half asleep and the lights hum a little too bright against the quiet. Someone 2 cubicles down was fighting with the espresso machine again. Loud puffs of steam, that sharp metallic click echoing down the hallway like a heartbeat. Somewhere else, a microwave beeped and a phone buzzed twice, then stopped. Little sounds of life in a place that had no idea what was about to happen. I could smell the burnt coffee drifting out from the break room, that bitter, scorched scent that settled into the air vents and clung to every sweater and scarf like a warning you could never quite wash out. It was Monday, and everything about it felt ordinary. That was the cruel part. Ordinary days are when the cracks start to show. My heels tapped against the polished floor, steady and slow, each step measured like a metronome. Not because I was calm, but because I had to be. The kind of calm you build when your stomach's in knots, but your face can't show it. I'd learned that kind of calm a long time ago. The printer hummed near the back corridor, a mechanical purr that I usually ignored. My report for the morning briefing was supposed to be waiting there. Financial projections, client notes, all the usual things that made Mondays survivable. I remember thinking how the paper would still be warm. It always was. When I reached the printer, a small pile sat neatly on the output tray, the edges aligned too perfectly to have been sitting long. I slid my hand beneath it, feeling the faint heat against my skin. I remember the smell of toner, that mix of dust and chemical sharpness, the kind that catches in your throat. I lifted the top page. My fingers caught on the glossy edge. Spreadsheets. That's what I expected. Instead, screenshots. Bright blue text bubbles against a black background, like a confession written in neon. My eyes took a second to adjust, like my brain refused to recognize what it was seeing. A woman in a red tank top. Late at night. A smile that wasn't meant to be friendly. The kind of smile that knows it's being watched. Her hair was tousled, a perfect accident. And the name at the top? Brandon, my boyfriend, my coworker. Same department. The one who told me he needed space on weekends to focus. I used to believe him. I used to give him that space, thinking it made me understanding, patient. Now it just made me a fool. The woman in the messages, Angela, accounting, blonde with curls that never seemed to fall out, of place, even in humidity. The kind of woman who called everyone hun and pretended it was kindness. The one who brought almond croissants to the office and always offered them to Brandon first. It had seemed harmless. Now, in those screenshots, it wasn't. I flipped the page, my fingers stiff, careful not to crumple the paper. Brandon. She's got no clue. Let her run the numbers, then I'll present it as mine in the meeting. Easy. Angela. Haha. We'll sabotage her project tomorrow. Don't feel bad, babe. It's just business. I stared at the words. My pulse slowed to something steady and unnatural. I felt cold. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver, the kind that starts in your chest and spreads outward, heavy and still. There were 11 pages, messages, selfies, winks, screenshots time-stamped like evidence. Some were marked 12:43 a.m., others had faint gray banners across the bottom. Job, reprinted, due to low toner. The words burned themselves into my mind. They hadn't even deleted them. They hadn't even thought to clear the queue. They just printed their betrayal like it was another task on the to-do list. The printer must have reprinted everything when the toner was replaced that morning. And the person who replaced it was me. I felt the irony cut clean through the numbness. I'd loaded that cartridge myself, humming along to a song I didn't even like, thinking I was helping the team get ready for a big day. I stacked the pages neatly, pressed the corners together, aligned them until every edge was perfect. Then I slid my own project report on top, the way I'd done 100 times before. The binder closed with a soft click that sounded final. I didn't cry. Not then. Not later. Tears would have been mercy, and I didn't have any of that left. I walked down the hallway like nothing had changed. Except everything had. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and stale coffee. The blinds were half open, sunlight striping the long table in uneven patterns. Management sat at the far end, sipping from branded mugs, their faces glowing with screens and spreadsheets. Angela sat near the head of the table, legs crossed tight, tapping her pen against the armrest with that practiced rhythm. When she saw me, she smiled. Too sweet, like she always did when she thought she'd already won. Brandon stood near the whiteboard, pretending to discuss something with Marcus from development. His grin flashed when he saw me, a crooked little thing that used to melt me. Now it just made me want to erase it. I gave him a polite nod, said nothing, and sat down as if it were just another Monday. The director called the meeting to order. Voices rose and fell, the usual chatter about deadlines and renewals. I could hear the whir of the projector fan. The smell of dry erase markers hung in the air. My binder sat in front of me, closed, waiting. When Brandon leaned forward, I knew it was his cue. He loved this moment, the performance, the validation, the way people nodded when he spoke words he hadn't written. Brandon, I'd like to walk the team through our new predictive analytics initiative. We've been refining the model and… Me. Before we move forward? My voice cut clean through the air. Calm, even. Louder than I expected. Every head turned. Me. Someone printed these on the office machine early this morning. I tapped the binder. Since they concern today's project, I think everyone should see them. Brandon blinked. Angela froze, pen suspended midair. I stood, walked to the document camera, and opened the binder. The pages made a soft rustle like a whisper in a cathedral. One by one, I placed the glossy sheets under the lens. The projector hummed. The screen behind me came to life in color. Message by message, emoji after emoji, timestamp after timestamp. Brandon's voice cracked. What the hell is this? I didn't look at him. I turned the next page. His message, 1:12 a.m. Let her finish the graphs. I'll pitch it like I did the heavy lifting. She won't say anything. Angela's reply, you're a genius. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, breathing. The director leaned forward slowly, his glasses catching the light. HR reached for her phone. Marcus exhaled, a long, low sound that filled the room. Someone at the far end muttered something under their breath. Angela's voice trembled. This is a violation. This is private. This isn't fair. Me. It was printed on company property, during work hours, on a shared machine. Nothing private about it. Brandon's jaw clenched. You're being dramatic. Me. You're being fired. The words came out before I even thought them, flat, precise, like pulling a trigger. I turned to the director. Would you like me to continue, or… He shook his head. No words. Just that one small movement that told me everything. HR's voice was steady. Brandon, Angela, please come with me. Now. Chairs scraped. The sound was harsh, too loud. Angela tried to collect her things, hands trembling. Brandon looked pale, all that smug energy drained away. He wasn't angry. Just… exposed. They stood, walked out. The door closed behind them with a soft click. For a moment, no one moved. Then I sat down, pulled my original report from the binder. My hands were steady now. I began explaining the project, my project. The one I'd spent months refining, calculating, testing. The one they tried to steal. My voice didn't waver, not once. As I spoke, I saw the reflection of the projector light flicker across the table, faint and warm. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence that followed each of my sentences. They had printed their lies, and I had used their own ink to destroy them. After the meeting, nobody said much. The hallways felt wider, emptier, filled with a quiet that wasn't quite silence. It was the kind of quiet that follows impact, the ringing after a struck bell. People didn't speak, but I could feel their glances brushing across my shoulders, quick and uncertain. Some looked impressed, some looked afraid, some couldn't decide which they were supposed to be. I didn't care. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, cold and constant. My reflection flickered faintly against the elevator doors as I passed. My pulse was still steady, like it had decided it couldn't afford to speed up yet. Then I heard the familiar shuffle of dress shoes behind me. "Kara," the director's voice came, quiet but deliberate. I turned. His tie was loosened a little, the morning's confidence faded into something more human. "That was handled professionally," he said. His words landed softly, but there was weight behind them. "HR's going to start an investigation, but I want you to know we're behind you. This project is yours. Fully." I nodded once. "Thank you." He hesitated, his gaze flicking to the closed conference room door behind us. Through the glass, the room looked frozen, the projector still glowing, chairs left at odd angles. "They really thought they could get away with it," he said. I didn't answer, because a part of me had thought that too. For weeks, maybe months, I'd felt the small shifts in tone, the missing pieces, the uneasy pauses when I walked in. But I told myself not to overthink. I'd been taught that suspicion makes you difficult, that keeping the peace keeps you safe. So I let it slide, until it didn't. It wasn't the affair that gutted me most. It was the betrayal beneath it, the kind that wears a familiar face and borrows your words, the slow erosion of truth, grain by grain, until you're left holding dust and calling it love. I went back to my desk. The open floor plan stretched before me, endless rows of gray partitions under sterile light. My cubicle looked exactly the same, yet nothing about it felt familiar. The air felt colder, heavier, though the thermostat hadn't changed. Brandon's desk sat a few feet away, his empty coffee mug tilted near the keyboard, his Dodgers cap hanging from the cubicle hook. I sat down and stared at that cap, the frayed blue brim, the faint sweat stain around the edge. He wore it every casual Friday, pretending he still played ball, pretending he still had that energy, that drive. In truth, he was just a man clinging to a memory of who he wished he'd been. We'd met here, in this very office 2 years ago, back when I still believed ambition could be shared like oxygen, back when I thought love and partnership meant lifting each other up, not standing on one another's shoulders. I remember that December vividly. The office was stringing up holiday lights, cheap tinsel looping over monitors, the faint smell of cinnamon candles that someone in HR wasn't supposed to burn. Brandon brought in peppermint bark from a local bakery. He'd left a note on my desk with it. "To the smartest woman in the room, let's make something amazing next year." He'd drawn a little star next to his name. I'd smiled at that. I'd kept that note tucked into my drawer, believing it was proof that we were building something together. I remember showing it to my sister over FaceTime on New Year's Eve, holding it up like it meant the future. Now that future was shredded paper. I opened the same drawer, found the note buried beneath old receipts and highlighters. The handwriting looked smaller than I remembered. I held it for a long second, felt the paper soften between my fingers. Then I slid it through the shredder slot. The motor hummed, slow and deliberate. The paper curled inward, teeth biting through it in clean, vertical strips. Each piece fluttered into the bin with a whisper. When it was done, I stood still for a moment, watching the remnants settle like snow. Angela's handwriting had shown up too, once, on sticky notes left around the office. Little messages that seemed friendly, harmless. "Oops, I took your stapler, haha." Or, "You left your pen at the scanner." The kind of cheer that masks calculation. Now, each smiley face looked like a knife. Around 2 o'clock, Tina from HR appeared, mid-40s, glasses with thin gold rims, hair pinned up tight. She didn't bother with small talk. "We found their messages stored on the server queue," she said, tapping a manila folder against her palm. IT backed up the entire print log. I nodded. "Legal's reviewing whether this qualifies as grounds for immediate termination. From what I've seen, it does, but we'll need your written statement to finalize the report." "I'll have it by end of day," I said. She set the folder on my desk. "Take your time. And Kara, What you did today? Most people wouldn't have had the nerve. Her words landed softly, then disappeared into the air like breath on glass. When she left, I opened the folder. Inside were more screenshots, more messages, ones I hadn't seen yet. My stomach tightened. I read them anyway. Angela. She's too sweet. She won't fight back. She's just glad to be included. Brandon. I'll take credit, and when the promo opens up, they'll remember my name, not hers. Each word was acid. I closed the folder slowly, pressing my palm against it as if to keep the words contained. They hadn't just plotted to ruin my project, they'd made a game out of it, like I was a harmless obstacle on a board they already thought they'd won. That's when the clarity hit. Not loud, but absolute. They thought I was harmless. Background noise. The dependable one who covered late shifts and smiled through exhaustion. The good girl who trained interns, volunteered for committees, baked cupcakes for birthdays. The kind of person everyone thanks but never remembers first. They'd mistaken kindness for weakness. They'd smiled at me while carving out my spine, but that was over. The rest of the day moved slow, thick as molasses. People drifted by my desk, pretending to refill coffee cups or grab printer paper, their eyes darting to me and away again. My inbox pinged with messages wrapped in concern but soaked in curiosity. Linda from HR. Hey, just checking in. That was wild this morning. Hope you're okay? David from sales. Wow, didn't know you had that in you. Total boss move. I didn't answer. I couldn't stand the way their words turned the morning into gossip. They wanted to witness strength, not understand it. But I wasn't finished. Brandon had copied my entire proposal last month, the one I'd built from scratch. 3 Fridays of staying late while he went home to rest. He'd sent it to the promotion board under his name, changing only the font and a few graphs. When I asked him about it, he'd laughed, casual, leaning against my cubicle wall. It's all in the same department, babe. No big deal. Except it was. Every keystroke of that project had been mine, and now I had proof. It sent me the download of the shared folder history. There it was. My file, opened under his login, renamed 2 hours later, sent to management. The metadata glowed like fingerprints under a blacklight. I added the evidence to the HR folder, attached a short note. Used without consent. For promotion materials. Proof attached. Then I signed my name with steady, deliberate strokes. That night, I drove home through drizzle, the kind that never quite turns into rain but still blurs the headlights. My apartment sat quiet at the end of the street, a single-story space I used to love coming back to. Tonight, it just felt still. Across the courtyard, someone had strung Christmas lights along a balcony railing. Red, green, gold. They blinked in uneven rhythm, reflecting against puddles on the pavement. I unlocked the door, slipped off my heels, and set my keys on the counter. The silence was thick enough to lean on. I poured a glass of water, the cool weight of it grounding me. The faint hum of the refrigerator filled the background. My hands finally started to tremble, just a little, the delayed echo of adrenaline. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. It felt like excavation, digging yourself out of a cave someone else buried you in, one message, one piece of evidence at a time. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I didn't recognize it. I let it vibrate twice before I picked it up. The text was short. You didn't have to do that. Please call me. No name. Just guilt wrapped in cowardice. I blocked the number. Then I turned the phone face down. Because I wasn't the girl who cried in her cubicle anymore. I wasn't the girl who smiled through sabotage. Tomorrow, I'd walk back into that office with every receipt, every log, every quiet piece of proof. And I'd make sure the people upstairs knew exactly what kind of man they almost rewarded and what kind of woman they underestimated. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. No alarm, no jolt of panic, just that quiet kind of waking that comes when your body decides it's time, when the mind has already been waiting for daylight, not out of anxiety, but out of clarity. It's strange how quiet the mind gets after a storm. The static disappears, the noise burns itself out. What's left is the stillness after everything's fallen apart. that eerie peace where you realize you survived it. It's like the silence after an earthquake, when the walls are still standing, barely, but nothing feels untouched. I brewed my coffee slow. The ritual mattered. Measured scoops, steady pour. The smell filled the kitchen, dark and grounding. Outside, the Texas sky shifted from black to gray to a pale kind of blue that looked brittle, as if it might crack if you stared too long. The cold crept through the window pane, faint and sharp. I wrapped my robe tighter around me and just breathed. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because something in me had changed shape. Pain had crossed a line. It wasn't chaos anymore. It was focus. I dressed sharp that day. Charcoal blazer, pressed slacks, simple earrings, hair tied back smooth. No softness, no hesitation. Nothing that could be mistaken as sweet. I wanted the kind of presence that didn't ask permission to be respected. When I walked into the office, it was different. The energy had shifted. Brandon's cubicle was empty. Angela's desk, too. Stripped bare, the little trinkets and photos gone. Only faint dust outlines where her keyboard used to be. It was like they'd been erased, not just fired, but deleted from the frame of the story. There was a small folded note left on Angela's chair, white paper, handwritten. I didn't touch it. I just looked at it long enough to know it wasn't for me. Then I walked past. Eyes followed me. Some pretended not to. I could feel it, though, the way conversations thinned when I passed. It wasn't cruelty, not exactly. It was realization, the moment people finally understood they'd been watching the wrong character all along. Around 10 o'clock, HR sent the company-wide email. Subject, staffing update. The body of the message was clinical, efficient. Effective immediately, Brandon R. and Angela M. are no longer employed with our firm. All inquiries regarding ongoing projects should be directed to Kara J., who will serve as the new lead for predictive strategy and analytics. Please respect all privacy protocols and direct further questions to human resources. No commentary, no drama, just a clean, silent cut. But the shockwave, that was something else. It rolled through every department like thunder. Quiet at first, then spreading in whispers through the open floor plan. Every Slack notification pinged with new life. People talked in coded messages, in side-eyes, in break-room murmurs. By noon, I had 3 emails from executives I'd never even spoken to before. From the SVP of Finance. Heard about the transition. Impressed by your resilience. Let's set a time to talk. From the CTO. Your work on the predictive model was brought to my attention. Would love to understand your vision for scaling. And from legal, quietly. Appreciate your cooperation. We may request further documentation. Also, your internal statement was remarkably composed. It wasn't flattery. It was recognition. The kind of respect people save for someone they'd underestimated. Later that afternoon, Marcus from development stopped by my desk. He was tall, always looked slightly too big for the office chairs, with 2 pens tucked into his pocket and that quiet patience of someone who watched more than he spoke. "Hey," he said, leaning on the partition. "Just wanted to say, that was brutal, but earned." He shifted his weight, eyes dropping to the floor before meeting mine again. "You know," he added, "I always thought you were the smartest person in the room, just didn't say much." "Saying less isn't the same as knowing less," I told him. He nodded. They forgot that. Before walking off, he said one more thing. "If you ever need someone to beta test your new model, I'm in." I smiled then. Not the polite kind, but the quiet, real kind that slips through without warning. Not out of flirtation, out of relief. Proof that not everyone was pretending. That night, the office emptied early. The sky outside turned the color of wet slate. I stayed behind, lights dimmed, the hum of the ventilation system the only sound. I pulled out the old project folder from the cabinet, the one I'd been refining in silence for months. The real model. The version I never showed Brandon. Not the full one, anyway. He used to tease me about that. "You don't trust the cloud?" he'd ask, leaning over my desk, half smile pulling at his mouth. "I trust silence more than applause," I'd said once. He'd laughed, thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Now you know why? I spread the documents across my desk, data tables, graphs, framework notes. I'd built the system like a heartbeat, predictive rhythm, pulse of information, everything interlinked, precise. Brandon had taken the skeleton. I still had the soul. I spent that evening rewriting the proposal from the ground up, line by line. No shortcuts. I tightened the logic, polished the visuals, layered in new metrics. When I was done, I added the full version of the model, the one with the deep forecast algorithm no one had seen yet. I saved every version under my own initials. Then I did one more thing. I added a final slide, black background, white text, simple, centered. She stole my story. I rewrote the ending. It wasn't for the team. It wasn't for management. It was for me. Friday came with that particular kind of buzz the office gets before a meeting, uneasy excitement wrapped in caffeine. They called a department-wide session. New leadership directions, the subject line said. Updated reporting lines. I stood at the front of the room when the time came. The projector hummed, filling the space with pale light. Rows of faces stared up, some curious, some cautious. I clicked the remote. My model appeared on screen, clean and alive. Data flowing across the slide, forecasts arching like constellations. I spoke clearly, no tremor, no pause. The work stood for itself. When the presentation ended, the applause was hesitant at first, then real. The director caught my eye across the room. Afterward, he asked me to step aside. "You know," he said, "we were watching that project closely. We just didn't know whose hands were really on the wheel." "Now you do," I replied. He nodded slowly. "We're rewriting our oversight protocols because of this. You exposed more than an affair. You exposed a blind spot." His voice softened. There was respect there, but also regret. Regret that it had taken this long for them to see me clearly. Days passed. Work shifted into rhythm again. Deadlines returned. The office began to breathe normally, as though the scandal had been airbrushed out of memory. But I noticed the difference in how people spoke to me now. Measured, careful, a little too polite. The kind of politeness that comes with awareness. One evening, I came home to find a FedEx envelope on my doorstep. No return address, just my name written in block letters. Inside was a single folded note. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain. "I messed up. I was scared of how good you were. I thought if I copied you, I could finally win. I didn't expect you'd fight back. I underestimated you." No signature. But I didn't need one. I folded it once and placed it in a box, the same one that held old drafts, screenshots, and proof. Not out of nostalgia, out of evidence. Some wounds don't bruise, they document. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say, because he thought he'd broken me. And all I did was rebuild from the same paper he used to destroy me. I used to think revenge was loud, the kind that slams doors and rattles windows, raised voices, late-night confrontations, dramatic exits where someone throws a glass or a line meant to echo in memory. But real revenge? It's quiet. It walks into the room, sits down where it belongs, and lets the truth do the screaming. No theatrics, no noise, just silence so sharp it cuts cleaner than any shouted word ever could. The Monday after Brandon and Angela were gone, the office felt eerily still. The hum of computers, the faint click of keyboards, the low whir of the ventilation system. It all sounded normal, yet everything underneath had shifted. An email arrived in my inbox at 8:43 a.m. Subject line, promotion. Letter. Confidential. The sender was the director. I clicked it open. Inside, a PDF attachment. My name at the top, followed by words I'd imagined but never truly believed I'd see. Effective immediately, Kara J. is promoted to Director of Predictive Strategy. I read it again, then again. The title looked foreign and familiar all at once. My name. No co-lead beside it, no collaborative recognition, no quiet erasure hiding in the fine print. The document was signed, stamped, and below the salary revision, a number I reread twice just to be sure, was a line that made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't expected. We appreciate your leadership during this transition and the integrity you demonstrated in protecting company assets. Integrity! The word landed heavier than any bonus could. I sat in my car in the parking garage, the printed letter trembling slightly in my hands. For a second, I just stared at it under the dim yellow light. Then I laughed. It came out uneven, half breath, half release. The sound of 2 years of swallowed frustration finally exhaled. They thought they could erase me, but I was the ink. And now I was writing the rules. A few days later, legal sent an update. A new thread, subject line. Internal case developments. The tone was formal, but between the lines I could feel the weight of what they'd uncovered. Turns out Angela had accessed internal financials far beyond her clearance level, downloaded multiple client invoices, forwarded them to Brandon's private email account. They weren't just cheating in the emotional sense. They were building something unethical, dangerous, and stupidly traceable. The company had everything they needed: logs, timestamps, forwarding trails, not just grounds for termination, grounds for prosecution. They didn't need my signature to move forward. The system itself had spoken louder than I ever could. Still, they asked if I'd meet with an external investigator for formal review. She arrived 2 days later, precisely on time. Navy pantsuit, crisp white shirt, no perfume, no jewelry, just a single gold watch that caught the light when she moved her hand. Her voice carried the calm authority of someone who had seen everything twice. "This won't take long," she said, opening her tablet. "We're gathering patterns, not gossip." I liked her immediately. She asked measured questions, each one designed to pull fact from memory. Had Brandon ever taken credit for my work before? Had I documented instances? Had I noticed changes in his tone, his control over shared materials? I told her about the proposal last quarter, the budget allocation draft he'd presented as his own, the meeting with the VP where he'd pitched my concept under a new name, his name. I told her how I'd sat in that same meeting afterward, silent, listening to leadership praise his fresh vision, and how, when I brought it up to him later, he'd sighed, like I was the one causing a problem. "You're making this a thing," he'd said, annoyance curling through his voice. "You're not even a manager." I'd believed him, because back then, I still thought hierarchy was the same as truth. Not anymore. The investigator closed her notebook with a soft click when I finished. "Thank you for documenting everything," she said. "Most don't." "I didn't do it for this," I told her. She studied me for a second, her gaze steady, sharp. "No," she said finally, "but you did it for you, and that matters." I nodded, and for a moment, it felt like we understood each other without needing more words. That weekend, I flew home to visit my mom outside Nashville. Her neighborhood was quiet, all porches and wind chimes, the smell of cut grass mingling with the faint sweetness of magnolia trees. Her house looked exactly the same: white shutters, a porch swing that groaned with age, and that comforting scent of cinnamon and lemon cleaner that never seemed to fade. She opened the door before I even knocked. "You okay, honey?" she asked, pulling me into her arms. "I'm better now," I said, and I meant it. Inside, sunlight streamed through lace curtains, making the dust motes shimmer like little ghosts. I sat at the kitchen table, same as I had when I was 15, and confessing heartbreaks that felt world-ending. This one was different, older, quieter. I told her everything: the messages, the betrayal, the meeting, the silence that followed. She didn't interrupt, just held my hand, thumb tracing small circles against my palm. The same way she had when I broke my wrist falling from the monkey bars at 7. Steady, reassuring, certain I'd heal. When I finished, she leaned back, her eyes glistening. "She stole your story," she said softly, "and you rewrote the ending." I smiled at that. "I didn't ruin her," I said. "I just stopped protecting her from consequences." Mom chuckled, stood up, wiped her eyes. "Well," she said, "I hope you printed it all in color." We both laughed, and something in me loosened. There's a kind of healing that comes only from being seen by someone who's known every version of you: the foolish, the trusting, the brave. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too still. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat on the porch swing. The wood creaked under me, soft and familiar. The wind smelled faintly of rain. I opened my laptop and scrolled through old work files. Versions stacked on versions, layers of edits, timestamps that traced years of quiet effort. I saw my name in the footers, my initials in the metadata, the ones he'd copied, the ones she'd renamed. Each one a chapter in the story of how I'd been slowly erased, until I stopped it. There was one folder I hadn't opened in months, a personal pitch deck, half-formed, half-forgotten. I'd started it over a year ago, consultancy idea. Predictive analytics tailored for small businesses. A plan for independence I never felt brave enough to finish. I stared at it for a long time, then opened it. The framework was solid, the math held up. The vision was mine, unfiltered, unclaimed. I used to believe I wasn't ready, that I needed more experience, more approval, more safety. But now I'd taken down a coordinated betrayal with truth alone. Now I had leverage. Now I had a name that meant something in my field. I renamed the folder Phoenix Initiative. Because rebirth, I realized, doesn't happen in fire. It happens in silence, in the rebuilding. The next morning before my flight back, I hugged my mom goodbye. She kissed my cheek and smiled. "You'll bring the pie next time," she said. "And don't be modest. Use that new title of yours when you order it." Back in the office, things felt different. People greeted me with respect that used to be reserved for others. They copied me on emails, asked for feedback, waited for my input before moving ahead. They didn't talk over me anymore. They didn't fill silence with condescension. They'd learned silence could be strength. One afternoon, after a meeting, a new intern approached me. Rachel. Nervous smile, notebook clutched to her chest. "Hi," she said, hesitating. "Sorry to bother you, but I just wanted to say what you did. It gave people like me hope, like, we don't have to smile through it." I looked at her, remembering the way I used to shrink myself to fit someone else's comfort. "You never have to smile through betrayal," I said. "Ever." Her eyes glistened. She nodded fast. "Thanks for proving that." As she walked away, I realized something I hadn't before. Revenge isn't always about the person who hurt you. Sometimes it's about everyone watching, quietly wondering if fighting back is possible. It is. You just have to wait until the ink dries. Then turn the page. 3 weeks after they were fired, something strange happened. The air had turned colder, sharper, the kind of chill that slides under your coat and lingers. I was leaving the building late, close to 7:30, the hour when the parking lot feels deserted but alive with echoes. My heels clicked against the concrete, the sound bouncing off the empty walls of the garage. That's when I saw him, Brandon. He was leaning against a faded red Ford pickup, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, head tilted low like he'd been waiting long enough to question why. When he noticed me, he straightened, pushed his shoulders back like muscle memory still told him confidence could be rehearsed. "Hey," he said. I stopped but didn't answer. The wind carried his voice across the few feet between us, brushing against me like a ghost that didn't know when to stop haunting. He stepped forward, careful, hesitant, not too close, but close enough for the December air to catch every word that left his mouth. "You really did it, huh?" My reply came out calm, level. "I told the truth." He looked down at the pavement, boot scraping against a line of fading paint. His breath fogged in front of him. "You were always better than me," he said finally. I hated how easy it looked for you." I felt something shift, like a door creaking open to a room I no longer cared to enter. "It wasn't easy," I said quietly. "You just weren't watching." He nodded slowly, eyes unfocused, as if he was trying to memorize the shape of a sentence that would never save him. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small thumb drive, held it between 2 fingers, the metal glinting beneath the parking lights. "This has some of your old files," he said. "Stuff I shouldn't have taken. I don't know if you even need them anymore, but—" He trailed off. The words dissolved in the cold. I didn't move, didn't take it. I looked at him, the same man who'd once smiled like I was his anchor, and later like I was his alibi. "Do you want me to forgive you?" I asked. He swallowed. "I don't deserve that." "Correct." The word left my mouth sharp as glass. He flinched, a faint tremor of shame across his face. That's when I realized he hadn't come for redemption. He'd come for release, but that wasn't mine to give. I turned away, walked toward the elevator doors that glimmered at the far end of the lot. Then I stopped, just once. "You didn't break me, Brandon," I said without turning around. "You showed me where I needed to rebuild." The doors slid open. I stepped inside, the metallic echo following me like punctuation. In the mirrored surface of the elevator, my reflection met me halfway. Same eyes, same face. But something had settled behind them, something sharper, steadier, like all the fractured pieces had finally clicked into alignment. That Friday, the director called me into his office. The lights were dimmer than usual, sunlight bleeding gold through the blinds, papers stacked neatly on his desk, the faint scent of ink and citrus polish in the air. "Kara," he began, leaning back in his chair, "we're offering you the chance to lead an internal think tank, company-funded, autonomous, your Phoenix initiative, realized." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words hung there, suspended, too heavy to believe right away. "Why now?" I asked. He studied me, thoughtful. "Because of how you handled this. The quiet exposure, the proof, the precision. That wasn't just professionalism, Kara. That was leadership." He paused, leaning forward. "And because when someone burns down the lies, stands steady in the smoke, and still sees clearly, you don't let her go. You invest." The room went quiet, the weight of his words lingering like dust in sunlight. "I accept," I said. He smiled, a rare, small thing, and nodded. "Good, it's time." When I left his office, the hallway lights flickered overhead. Not faulty, just soft. The kind of flicker that happens at dusk, when day hands itself over to night and the building exhales. I walked past the printer, the same one that had exposed everything. It stood there innocently, humming faintly, ready for another morning's work. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper tray. The toner had been refilled earlier that day. A new cycle. Clean slate. Funny. That machine had witnessed more truth than most people ever would. People think technology is the danger, that data ruins reputations. But it's not the machines that betray you. Machines just tell the truth. They keep the receipts. And maybe that's poetic, because they printed their lies and I used their own ink to destroy them. Now, things are different. I lead my own department. I mentor women like Rachel, bright, driven, unafraid to ask the hard questions. I advise legal on ethical compliance frameworks, making sure what happened to me doesn't happen again to anyone else. And next year, the Phoenix Initiative becomes official. My branch, my vision, fully autonomous. Angela once tried to erase my name from a project file. Brandon tried to steal my voice in a boardroom, but all they really did was teach me how to speak louder, how to stand still when others try to push you down, how to let silence carry weight instead of weakness. Because when I finally spoke, really spoke, they had no choice but to listen. I think about that sometimes, when I walk past the same conference room where it all began. The chairs are the same. The projector hums the same low tune. But when I stand at the head of that table now, it feels different. I belong there, and everyone knows it. I don't hate them. I don't even wish them harm. The truth handled that already. Sometimes justice doesn't come in noise or chaos. Sometimes it comes in a document, a title, a new door that opens because you refused to close your mouth when it mattered. So, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.